This video is brought to you by Arma, who provides top quality supplements to athletes of all kinds. Riders like Nick Way, Chad Reed, Jeremy McGrath use them for pre, during, and post-activity applications. Be sure to head to armasport.com and use the code RACERX. That's RACERX, no spaces, for 20% off your first order. Hey guys and gals, welcome to RacerXOnline.com. Another introduction, and we are out here at the Cahuilla Creek MX Park, but don't let the MX Park fool you. There are tons of trails behind us. We tested on in the day. We had a little mix of what you're seeing right now, a motocross track and off-road, because this is the 2021 Kawasaki 250X and 450X introduction. These bikes are new to Kawasaki for 2021, and Kawasaki's goal is to really target this kind of guy right here. This is Matt Servog. This is one of my buddies. I brought Matt out to give a real world perspective of what it's like to ride these things, because he works from 2 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. He still will go ride his dirt bike after work, and he leaves from the house into the desert. It's dry, dusty, hacked out. I don't want to go do that. He goes and do that kind of thing. So this is a perfect scenario. I'll give you a little bit of what I think, my taste. Matt's going to give you a little bit of his taste. He weighs about
200 pounds.
200 pounds-ish. He had a pastry this morning, so it might be 202. But we broke him down today. Kawasaki was cool enough to invite all of us media out here to try to really hone in on the normal type of rider. And I say normal because a lot of you guys out there just don't want to be closed course guys. Even though these bikes are for closed course only, you're more than a motocross rider. You want to go ride some trails. You want to go race GNCC, a works race, or even one of those J-Day events back east. There's all kinds of things that you might need a bike for that does both. Kawasaki introduced this for you guys out there. So some of the changes that they made to make a off-road-ish bike is an 18-inch rear wheel. You have a skid plate. You have a water pump guard. Obviously, on the 250, you have Kyb Suspension, right? So Kyb did off-road specific settings, so a little bit softer than the moto version. They actually went a spring rate down on each end. Showa did the exact same thing. Specific off-road softer settings to get more compliancy, to get more of a comfortable feel out on that back in the trees where it's hacked out, or if you guys are back east, maybe you got those roots and those trees back there that really you need some softer stuff. That's what they did the suspension for. They really aimed at getting a more comfortable feel. Now, still has the Renthal fat bars. The transmission ratio, the gears are the same on both bikes as the Moto model, but they don't feel the same out here today. I also would like to mention ECU settings. Different. They come with black couplers on the X models. If you guys are familiar with the coupler system on the Kawasaki's, they have a white, green, and black. Black is more of a smoother, richer setting. Green is your stock standard setting, and then you have a white, which is a leaner setting. You get a little bit more throttle response, a little bit more excitement. So these come with the black couplers. He and I tested both, and we're going to give you a little snippet on what it's like to ride these things right now. All right, so like I said, he's 200 pounds, so he's not the typical 250 rider, Matt, here, but he does like to ride anything on two wheels. So I'll give you guys my impressions, but coming from a working man, what do you think about a 250X here? I guess the trail is, what, 5 miles long, a little bit of moto, a little bit of off-road?
It was a lot of fun. It was real tight, and that's where this 250 was a lot of fun. It's so light and easy and nimble, just lay over and switch direction. That's where this bike, I had a lot of fun. Though it lacked power from a 450 I'm used to, I feel like through those tight sections, I was able to go a lot faster because I will just lay it over, change direction with the course, because it was really tight through the bushes back here.
And you guys are probably laughing at us back east saying, yeah, tight, whatever. I mean, for West Coast standards, I mean, it's tight for us. A lot of thick, shrubbery, okay, because I know we don't want to call them trees. You guys on the East Coast will yell at me for saying they're trees. Shrubbery, I like to say. Tall shrubs with thick roots. For me, it feels like the 2021 MX version on the 250. Really revs out really far. Smooth low end feel, maybe a little bit smoother than the Moto version, but for me, a lot more compliancy and cushion. That 18-inch rear wheel does soak up some of that small trail hack that's out there, if you guys are familiar with that, in the roots and those ruts that get those chatter bumps. That 18-inch rear wheel does help that situation. Also, I always mention this about a Kawasaki. It's really tough to beat the frame character of a Kawasaki, even though on the 250 model, the Moto model, they went to a stiffer natured frame. You don't really feel it with this 250X. For me, with the KYB softer stuff, on the motocross track, it is soft. For you, I mean, I'm jumping pretty much a lot of these things on the track today, but for you, maybe coming up short, how was that?
Oh yeah, it would bottom out, and I'm known for over jumping a little bit, under jumping a little bit, and it would definitely blow through the stroke pretty easy with these settings on the X model. But in the chop is where it really came to be very comforting through all the rough chop and coming in on braking bumps. That's where it kind of made up for it, the softness of the suspension.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to, as a suspension technician, really hone in on trying to balance and please a rider that rides moto and then rides the trail. So you gotta have some give and take. And for me, I was still able to charge through the moto section. I just had to stiffen up the front fork. So I ended up going 2 clicks stiffer and slowing the rebound down. And then I was like, yeah, it's still not enough. I went another 2 clicks, and that was actually better. So 105-ish on the sag for the 250. Still felt a little bit front end heavy off throttle, but again, in the slower speed stuff out in the trails, very comfortable, easy to ride. So for me, the second gear is really usable out here on the tight trails. If I didn't mention it already, 1351 is the stock gearing on both of these bikes, which is 1 tooth, aka, you guys know me, the Jody. They went up 1 tooth on these models to give you a little bit more luggability, I guess, in these high gears. If you're going to third gear, you can lug it a little bit more. They don't have heavier flywheels, so they changed the gearing. It does help a little bit. Honestly, I would go to this gearing if you're on a moto bike. So for me, 1351, easier to get in third gear. And in the very tight, West Coast tight, situations that we have out here, second gear is really usable. Hydraulic clutch. I'm a fan of the Kawasaki hydraulic clutch. I'm not a fan of the lever shape. But for me, I can abuse it. It's really easy to actuate and make my rear wheel connected feel out of these corners. So I like a hydraulic clutch in off-road situations. I could take it or leave it in motocross situations, but for you, you ride a Husqvarna normally, so what do you think about this clutch?
I like it a lot. I feel like it's a lot more linear. You know, I can really manage the power of the bike with this clutch over, let's say, what comes on a Husqvarna.
Yeah, Brembo.
Yeah, and
or no, actually, that's a Magura.
Oh, yes, it is. So for me, it was easier because I'm more the type lay off the clutch and just do everything with the throttle. And in these tight wooded shrub areas, these shrubs, I was able to actually modulate the power really well with this clutch because I could, it wasn't so on-off-ish like some of the other clutches.
Moving on to the 450, for me, obviously, I like to lug my bike. If we lived in an area was tighter, I think I would gravitate towards the 250. But for us West Coast guys, races that we do, the trails that we have mostly, we have some tight areas and then it opens up. So for me, this 450 doesn't feel like too much bike. Again, Kawasaki does an excellent job with frame absorption. I'm sure you can talk about that, but I love the engine character on this X. It has the black coupler. And on the 250, I went to the white one to get a little bit more excitement down low, pop out of these little tighter sections that we have here. But for me, I kept the black coupler on the 450X because it was really long, broad, connected to the rear wheel. I like that luggability that it gave me. So stuck with the black coupler. And for me, honestly, I don't think there is a better, I'm going to say this loosely here, engine character out there right now than what Kawasaki has for a power plant. It's very KTM-ish, and if you guys ride a KTM out there, you know what I'm talking about. Long, linear, easy to ride, very connected to the rear wheel. These are the things that come to my mind when I'm out in the trail riding this thing. There's not a lot of RPM response or excitement, but it never gets me in trouble. So engine character for you? You have a lot. You actually excited to ride this bike.
Oh, I was very excited, especially because I've come from racing some works events, and the engine on this thing, it's so broad and yet revs out far. It was nice. I was second gear through these tight sections, and I was able to lug it in the corners, but then pull all the way without having to shift to third to the next corner. So that was just a little easier on my mind that I didn't have to upshift, downshift. And part of that is the mapping, but the gearing actually helped also.
Yeah. I didn't really get to lug it in third gear a lot here. I felt like if I was in third gear, I had to downshift to second. But if the trail opened up a little bit and it was a little bit more flowy, third gear was good as long as you covered that clutch. Again, the Nissan clutch is amazing. I like that feel, but Kawasaki, can we look at a different lever shape at some point in time? This, for me, for whatever reason, does feel a little bit better than the Moto model. Maybe it's me, but it doesn't have that sharp feeling like the Moto model. One thing I do want to mention is I want to stick up for Kawasaki a little bit here. When I post a KX450 on social media or on RacerXOnline.com, you guys always say, oh my gosh, look at that bazooka, look at the muffler. It's a monstrosity. And yes, it is long. Yes, it is big. It's not the most appealing muffler. We have this 450 flipped the other way, but I want to stick up for it a little bit. I've tried a lot of different aftermarket mufflers. This engine character that this muffler provides, this power spread, is really good. It's very hard to match this stock feeling power when you go to an aftermarket muffler. It's very tough. Sure, would I like it a little bit shorter? But then the engine character is different. So you have to have some give and take. You have to have some forgiveness. Just a little bit of woo-saw in you, okay? Just a little bit of calmness. Don't get fired up over a muffler. It's not that bad. I don't think it's that ugly. To me, yes, your boot hits it. It gets black. I see that now. It does stick out a little bit. You get an aftermarket muffler, it's still sticking out. You might lose a pound, pound and a half, but your engine character is different. This spread of power that this muffler provides is long, linear, connected, and smooth. And when you guys, when I say connected to the throttle, you guys might wonder, what is that? So when I touch the throttle, it's very abrupt, and it's not abrupt in a bad way. It's like connected. As soon as I move it, I feel like everything goes through my right hand and there's no side-to-side movement. The tire bites and goes forward. Other mufflers have more excitement, have more crack, but then I get side to side. So I could do a comparison about having a girlfriend. Maybe not the best looking girl, but she's super cool. That's the stock muffler on the KX450X. The Showa suspension. I had a little bit better feeling for me with the Showa stuff today. It held up a little bit more. It felt a little bit firmer, so I could get a little bit more aggressive. A lot of sand whoops in the trails today, so I could actually kind of hop, wheel tap, jump. It kind of opened up the trail a little bit more for me to give me a little bit more freedom on what I wanted to do, if I wanted to jump and hop or if I wanted to hammer them. It had better hold up, and honestly, I didn't touch a clicker. 106 on the sag, and it was very balanced. The 250, a little bit front end heavy, off throttle, but for me, off throttle on this, a little bit better. I do want to mention that these fork settings do feel different than the Moto model. For me, I always talk about a top out feeling. You hit a jump and it's super quick, and you feel a little bit of almost like your headset's loose a little bit, but it's the preload on the fork being really quick and soft. So you have to adjust to that. When you stiffen up the fork, it does go away. So if you guys do feel that at home, slow the rebound down a little bit and then stiffen up that fork, and that kind of goes away. Suspension for you on the Showa side?
I thought there was more comfort. The initial part of the stroke in the beginning felt a little softer than the KYB stuff, but it did, I was going to second what you said, it held up a lot better, coming in hard to some of these braking bumps. And then also on the Moto track, it wasn't blowing through the whole stroke as much. And so it kind of gave me the best of both worlds. I could go fast for my pace. At the same time, it handled all the chop when I was slowing down, coming in and out of corners.
Ergonomically, I'm 6 foot. You're about a little bit shorter than me.
5'8"-ish.
Okay. I like the cockpit area of a Kawasaki. I mentioned this on the Moto model. It feels very Honda-ish. I'm up a little bit. The bar bend is nice. You have the capability to move the bars and the pegs to open that up. For me, I like the stock triangle, so I'm fine with that. And I purposely abused the clutch a little bit to see if it would get hot. The engine never got hot. Old Kawasaki's to me would kind of like boil over, or if you're brake dragging, the rear brake would squeak. Now on the 250, didn't have that problem. I tried to do it on the 450. I really didn't get that at all, but especially you guys in the woods, you guys steer with your rear rot, so you're always pivoting and you're dragging your rear brake. Didn't get a lot of squeak on the rear brake, which is nice. They actually went down on the disc on the 250 back to a 240 from a 250. That still has a 250 millimeter disc on it. I did notice that I like the modulation of the rear brake on the 250 a little bit better, just because it was a little bit less grabby. I don't know, you even noticed that?
I actually did. I noticed on the 250.
Are you sure?
I actually did. Because coming into corners with as dry as it is,
yeah,
I was able to actually use the rear brake on the 250. The 450, every time I felt like I'd tap it, it was locking up the rear brake and sliding everywhere. And honestly, I thought they both had the same sized rotor when I got on them.
Things I didn't like. AT81 tires, not a huge fan. I complain and use the B word a lot when I talk about tires. I would rather, and you guys know this, I would rather have MX33s on here than AT81s. Very weird feeling on lean angle, not a lot of lean angle traction, but I do know these AT81s are the preferred tire to most guys out here on the West Coast because of life. But for me, I would rather see you guys go to MX33 if you guys are a Dunlop tire consumer. Grips, not a huge fan of those. If you guys plan on, you're off-road guy, you plan on riding more than a half hour, us, wussy moto guys, 30 minutes, there's fine. 2 hours on these grips, don't know if I would want that. So only a couple things I dislike besides the little bit soft suspension on the 250, but overall, very fun bike. I'm glad Kawasaki is getting with the program, so to speak. Like, hey, this rider right here likes to ride off-road and moto. He just doesn't want to ride moto all the time. So it's nice to introduce a bike. Some of you guys out there are like, oh, who cares, dude? It's 18-inch rear tire. There's no handguards, which I don't know if you can get a close-up on this, but I did rack my hands. I wish there were handguards on here, yes. And I wish it was a little bit bigger of a tank. But for me, if you're riding off-road, you're going to stick an 18-inch rear tire on. You're going to add some guards to it. So it's nice to have that option. The cost is only $100 more on the 250 and then $200 more on the 450 from the motocross model. So not that much more considering you're getting more for your buck. That's what I like to say. Now, here's the question. I was going to throw it to you, but here's the question. You're the consumer. You buy a bike every 2 years. I'm the privileged guy that gets free bikes and all these things, right? So the question is, would you buy one of these bikes and would you buy a Kawasaki?
I definitely would. And after taking a couple laps on this course, it kind of made me want to start racing more works races again. Just the engine character and the comfort that this bike offered when it got rough made me really like, I would love to buy one of these. It's not much more expensive than a moto bike and you can go out and ride it. And I thought it did just as well as the MX bike to me at my skill level on this moto track here today.
Yeah, so Matt has our 450 moto version, and he even mentioned that he likes this character a little bit better. So coming from a guy that buys bike every 2 years, he coming from a Honda, a Husqvarna, you like this Kawasaki, and you would pay money for it.
I would. I definitely take my hard-earned money and put it down on this Kawasaki. I'm just glad there's someone else who threw a bike into this off-road world just to give us more options and more availability to the consumer out there.
So the cat's out of the bag. I'm going to work on, I haven't done shootouts this year for moto, but I'm going to work on an off-road shootout. I feel like that's something that we need to do at RacerX and at KeeferIncTesting.com. So I'm going to work on doing a hybrid MX off-road bike shootout. This ought to be fun. We're going to hit some trails, hit some motocross tracks, and see what's best for you guys out there. All different types of riders, sizes, abilities. So look for that on RacerXOnline.com in the winter. And it's been fun. So thanks to Kawasaki. Thanks to you guys for watching. Matt, course, thank you.
Thank you.
And you guys haven't subscribed to RacerX publication, that magazine's available. And there's also a special out. You can get a calendar. So 1 year subscription, get a free calendar for 2021. Very cool. And a lot of good stories in that magazine. So check it out. Thank you guys for joining me. See you on the next one.